Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started again. When our panelist gets here, just, be sure to give her a big round of applause and welcome, or about time, whatever you'd like to do. So welcome everyone to this workshop, how strategic energy management can help your multi-family property thrive. My name is Marty Mendenhall, and I'm here with my colleague, Karen Brooks, who's hiding behind me. And we are with the Strategic Energy Management Program of Energy Trust of Oregon. Oh, there we are. And a little bit about us. Energy Trust is an independent nonprofit organization serving 2.4 million customers throughout Oregon and Washington. And the SEM program and the existing buildings program, I just saw someone walk in from the existing buildings program, they're also here. Those are just some of the ways that Energy Trust of Oregon brings communities to access affordable and renewable energy, reducing the need for additional power resources. So the results of this program are pretty darn amazing. This is a snapshot of the cumulative success of Energy Trust of Oregon. We have already helped participating customers save $4.6 billion on utility bills so far. And over time, these energy savings are going to add up to approximately $8.9 billion, which I think is pretty cool. Now, one really cool fact is that we have kept 36.2 million tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. And that's the equivalent of keeping 7 million cars off of Oregon roads for an entire year. So pretty cool. And with that, over to you, Karen.
Well, thank you, Marty. We just wanted to point out that Energy Trust is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion by continuously learning how to serve organizations that house people navigating low incomes, people of color, people whose primary language is not English, people with disabilities, and people and residents in rural parts of the state, sorry. So you may be asking yourself, what is strategic energy management? So in a nutshell, strategic energy management, or SEM as we call it, is a holistic, proactive, and integrated, lots of words there, approach that considers energy management as a fundamental part of an organization's strategic planning. By using the right tools and expertise and continuously improving energy performance, SEM can lead to significant energy and cost savings over time while contributing to environmental sustainability. So with that said, I have the privilege of introducing our astute panelists for today's workshop. They're here to share their SEM experience. So first is Albion Spahn from NeighborWorks Umpqua. When she arrives, it will be Nancy Baker from Milestone Property Management, and we have Quinn Black and Deborah Tyson from Snitzer Properties. Welcome.
And with that, I am going to start off with our first question for the panelists. And I think, Quinn, I am going to pick on you first here today. What value have you received from participating in multifamily strategic energy management, or we call it SEM?
Good morning. Well, first of all, besides the $20,000 of free money that we got for working less than 12 months with both of these coaches for 4 of my properties that are elderly and disabled properties in downtown Portland. Besides that, we were connected with Energy Trust, who did an evaluation of all 4 of my properties. We replaced all the fixtures in every single one of those properties. For lighting, we had some recommendations for some new heating, and we were able to get money beyond the $20,000. And I'm not joking about this $20,000 check. So for different participations along the way and benchmarks, we would get these checks for each of my properties, like $1,000 here, $2,000 here, and I think the biggest check was like $8,000, based upon the work that we did with our tenants. Probably beyond the monetary part of of the project, my tenants got to participate in some regular, and I have 540 plus tenants. Got to participate in some regular meetings where we educated them on the things that they could do individually in their apartments, as well as how they could help us as a property management company by noticing things within our buildings and explaining different things to us. And for me, I have service coordinators at each of my properties, and I am no longer interfacing necessarily with my tenants because of my current position. I was able to see tenants that I had moved in 10, 15 years ago that were participating in this program with us. And for me, that was probably welcome. Hi, Nancy.
Yeah, this is welcome, Nancy. You can close that door now. Thank you. She was stuck behind an accident. Quinn, I'm going to ask when you finish that, would you hold the mic like right up there?
Okay.
That's the request from the audience.
Yes, okay,
Thank you.
sorry. I said I didn't need a mic because I actually am very, very, very loud. So, but anyway, so back to the tenants. Essentially for us, not only was it a monetary thing, a learning thing, and one of the things I kept saying to everybody involved, all of my staff, and my tenants, is that we get to be part of saving the world. So just a little itty bitty part that we were doing, you know, she had talked about taking 7 million cars off off Oregon streets, right?
That's
So,
correct.
so in the process of that, we're determining a long-term plan for helping all 4 of my properties, and also continuing to educate my tenants who really got to be part of the problem solving. So for me, that was the most worthwhile. Also, the money, of course, for my owners is always a benefit.
And not to squabble about anything, but you sort of shortchanged yourself. You actually got $28,000 last year.
20, I can't count, sorry.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Quinn, for that brilliant answer. And Albion, you are up next. And I'm going to ask you, tell us about your experience with multifamily strategic energy management.
About participating in the SEM. That's better. I'm going to use this. Can you hear me now? When we were approached about participating in the SEM energy program, I didn't know much about it. I think the main thing, the first thing that was an incentive for us, I have to admit, were the carrots, the incentive checks. Once we got involved in the program, though, I think a really significant benefit to our organization was that it got different parts of our organization talking with each other. My role in NeighborWorks is construction project management with the real estate development group. And the SEM program allowed me to work more closely with property managers and maintenance staff. And the direct benefit to me was that it showed me in real time how our properties are working, what things work, what things don't work, which I think makes me better at my role in construction of new properties for the organization. It kind of got us out of our silos and talking with each other. That was, the checks are great, the money is great, but I think as an organization, I feel like I'm now on a first name basis with people in our organization that I wasn't working with before this program.
Thank you so much. I've got a follow-up question for you. How does strategic energy management benefit property owners and managers?
A real direct benefit was at the start of the program, they do something called treasure hunts, where you meet with people from the SEM program and you get your property managers and you get maintenance staff and myself, and we would go and we would walk around the properties in real time, and they would point out things that could stand to be addressed. There's a dryer vent that wasn't being used. Someone could plug that. Insulating hot water piping. Maybe someone could put film on a window to mitigate the solar gain coming in during late afternoon times. Small things. But that showed us that with these small steps, we could directly improve the quality of life of the people working and living at these properties.
That almost answers my next question, so close. And that is, how has strategic energy management improved residents' living experience?
A conversation that has been had around a few tables in my organization is this conflict. It feels like a conflict whether the property owner is paying the electric bill or the tenant. And I know personally going into this program, I always had it wasn't a well-informed assumption, but there was a feeling of, why would a tenant be interested in energy savings if they're not paying the electric bill? What's their motivation? I don't think this is going to work. Thank you. But it ends up that wasn't the case at all. The SEM program, it's kind of a two-pronged approach. You're dealing with the property managers, but there are also these resident engagement opportunities where we would have these workshops to bring the residents in and teach them about energy savings. And I remember at one point, they would distribute goodie bags at the end of these presentations, and one of our property managers pulled me aside and said, "What's in these goodie bags?" And we went through them, and there were things like weather stripping and things like that. And she said, "You get to take these out of the bags because they are going to try to do this themselves," which is great in principle. But she said, "We don't want them doing it. We'll do that ourselves." But the people were really excited to get these bags, to learn about energy savings, and they were motivated to try to do things to improve the efficiency of their properties. And these were properties where they weren't paying the electric bill. So it was a sea change for me, kind of saying, I went into this program with this assumption about how tenants would be thinking about energy usage, and I was completely wrong.
That is a fantastic answer. Thank you very much. And this last part, I'm going to just throw it out there if one or more of you want to answer. And that is, what are some obstacles you've faced when implementing strategic energy management in multifamily buildings, and how did you overcome them?
So before we had heard about the Strategic Energy Management Program, one of the things that we were already trying to work on was how to reduce the energy in our buildings for our owners, ourselves, for our residents. We had brought in a couple of different companies that came in and said, "Oh, you can change out all this lighting and you can do this and you can do that, and it's going to cost you $160,000, and then you're going to get this money back over time in either the energy savings or incentives." But all that money had to be put up front, and there was just no way that our owners were going to be able to do that, and we knew it. And so with the participation in the Strategic Energy Management Program, we were given a whole lot of little tiny steps that we could do, that some of, quite a few of them were free. Others were very, very low cost. And it was the milestones that we made that helped get us the incentive money, the carrots, as Albion had said. And it made the whole idea much more manageable. This is something that we can do, and we can feel like we're making an impact without having to spend a whole ton of money ahead of time. And so that was part of the part that was really exciting for us.
So I think with anything that you try to implement into your property, there's always going to be that pushback of the unknown of, just it's a disruption of my everyday come home, and you're messing with the flow of things. I find that a lot of that is just maybe lack of education, and with the lack of education, maybe it's the resources, not only money, but time. As property managers or being in this industry, we all know that there's more than enough on our plate at times. So putting together a workshop sometimes doesn't fit in our schedule and or budget. With the SEM program, you have that support system for us, it was with Marty and Karen, to not only put all of this together, but put the goodie bags together, keep you on track, email you these pamphlets and mail out these letters that you can send out to your residents. It takes the guesswork out of it, and it allows you to best serve your community by being the face of it and you introducing it to your residents without necessarily having to do all of the work on the back end. And maybe eventually we'll get to that point where we'll be able to do all this work by ourselves, but to ease into what our goal was with the energy savings, it was really nice to have that support system. That I think is the biggest thing for me. And just overcoming language barriers. A lot of the time I don't have time to sit there and translate pieces of paper so I can send them out to my residents to best reach everybody. But the SEM program did all of that for us. So it really takes the work out of that.
I'd
So
like to add to that. I'm gonna toot
I was
our
gonna say, you can
horn.
top that. That was a pretty good answer. Thank you.
I'm the loud one of the group. Okay, so I would first of all like to reiterate how great these two, in particular, Marty and Karen. So there are different benchmarks along the way that you have to fulfill by certain dates. And assuming you do what they ask you to do, you complete what you need to do, but they are very good at prodding for that. So one of the things that happens when you do a resident engagement or once a month, we were also hanging flyers to either educate tenants on some of the energy things that were coming up or also what we have been doing. And as part of that, SEM has a catalog of different flyers. In my buildings, we translate everything into 7 different languages, every single document that is required. And we will go beyond that if needed, beyond the 7 languages as needed. So that translated document that you had, we paid for, we did. So I just, we work for Schnitzer Investment Properties, but we are owned by Cedar-Sinai Park, which is a nonprofit. So sometimes people hear the word Schnitzer, they're like, oh, they have money to pay for that. But in truth, we're the management company. We used to own the 4 properties that I run now. But essentially, as part of the program, we were able to give back to them all those, we have a system already in place, all the translated flyers. So if you guys have any languages, I pretty much guarantee that they've all been translated and ready to go. So I just had to toot my horn for that. And I'm glad that it was helpful for you.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, that was a great answer to that question. And now I'm going to hand it over to Karen.
And we do appreciate you, Quinn, and Sister Properties for allowing all the other multifamily SEM participants to use your translations. They have been well used. So here's a group question for everyone, and we're affectionately calling these all plays. So was there a problem you were trying to solve by participating in multifamily strategic energy management?
We talked about this ahead of time. Who's going to be answering what? I can't remember who's on. Go ahead, Nancy. You got it. Yeah. Go.
I am the chosen one. Okay, so for us, the biggest problem that we were trying to solve was how to best engage our residents and resident retention. That, in all honesty, was my biggest thing. What programs can I bring to my property to let my residents know I care about you, I care about this property, and I want us to live in a shared space where we all take responsibility for where we live. And that, I think, has been the biggest thing that we've gotten back, is we've been able to touch base with a lot of residents that maybe we hadn't connected with because there was no common interest. But now that we've been able to bring all of this information to them, it has opened them up to be able to ask us questions about energy usage, not only in the office, but maybe inside of their homes. So I think that was the biggest thing, is I just wanted to connect with my residents more. And coming on to a new property, it's always difficult to bridge that that trust. Maybe previous management wasn't doing such a great job. When you get on site, it really is for me just being able to show them that I care about the property. So that was what I wanted to solve mainly.
So one of the things that we try to do at Schnitzer Properties is be proactive about what's going on. Look at what's going on in the world and how can we be proactive about the way directions are going. So in looking at what's going on in the environment, it makes a lot of sense that we need to figure out ways to cut back our energy usage, not just for ourselves, but also for our residents. How do we educate ourselves? How do we educate our residents? And so trying to save the world, working towards saving the world, saving energy, saving money, again, looking at what's going on out in the world with the pandemic and all the different things that have been going on in Portland and the world. Everybody knows how can we be more effective with what we have? And so that was one of the main things that we were trying to solve, proactively looking, how can we move ourselves forward in the same direction for sustainability.
I'm going to add, with the pandemic or COVID, one of my buildings in particular did not reopen because we were in the middle of a 17-floor, $6 million pipe replacement project. And so when Karen and Marty brought this into my buildings, it was a great way to reopen, in particular for this building. 3 of the buildings were opened after COVID, but this one particular building was not. And so it was like this grand opening for resident engagement, and they were able to participate, even more than they would have in the past. They were so grateful to jump on board. They got their photos taken. They signed a pledge. I mean, my tenants were so excited to participate in how they could help with the common areas, how they could help in their own units. And this really became for at least this particular property, a big community event where they're asking about what we're planning to do for the future for the building. When I think originally, I think there's 235 tenants in that unit. That doesn't include double occupancy. And these people were asking questions, bigger questions to my management team about what our future goals are for being part of the solution to the world. And that for me was very exciting. We don't always get the opportunity to give back. And that was definitely a huge, in my opinion, a huge part to be able to share with my tenants.
And I have to say too, that Quinn sacrificed her body in a dunk tank at that carnival.
And I apologize in advance if I talk for more than 10 minutes to anybody. I give an analogy, so I'm going to give an analogy now. So in my youth, I worked at an architecture office, and I had a fantastic boss who insisted that we track our time in 15-minute increments to bill out to the clients. And I remember meetings where people were complaining about this process and how onerous this felt. And his response to that was that the difference between everyone getting a bonus at the end of the year and the company closing its doors and turning the lights off was 10%. And 10% from billable time, I want to give this as an example because it's stuck with me ever since. In the course of a billable week, 10% is 48 minutes a day, which is about 24 minutes in the morning, 24 minutes in the afternoon. And that's the amount of time you can blow just checking Facebook or looking at your email. Small incremental steps were the difference between a successful firm and a firm that was not going to make it. And energy savings is in the SEM program, I think demonstrated to us that it was that same approach, that everybody loves doing value engineering and finding something that where you can cut $1 million out of a project. But most of my value engineering experience has been where you're almost there. You got to get 10-15% out of the project and then you can go. Energy savings, through the SEM program, it showed us that these really small, tiny incremental steps can have a real impact on our overall success with our properties.
That is a fabulous analogy, Albion. Thank you. So I have a follow-up question for a couple of you. Does anyone want to share a real life success story where multifamily SEM resulted in cost savings and or improvements? Get them, Albion.
I'm going to go again. Okay. After this, I'll stop. But this is a really good story. We were doing one of our treasure hunts at a particular property, and this goes back about 15 years before my involvement with the organization, but we have a large multifamily property that has an extensive PV system on the roof. And we were looking at re-roofing this property, and there were discussions about, oh, this is going to be such a pain because it's got these PV panels. They're dirty. Does this even work? The system was set up, and this is important. The system was set up so that it was benefiting the tenants. So we didn't have any way to see what their electric bill was, if the system was even working, and it was just it was out of our kind of group consciousness. It had been a few generations ago that it had been installed, so property managers didn't necessarily know how to use it. I didn't know anything about it. Most people in the organization just knew that there was a PV system there. That's great, but no one really could tell you how it worked. So the SEM program comes through. We're doing our treasure hunt, and we find one of the inverter. There's an inverter that has a weatherproof cover over it, and it's filled with water. And they point this out. They say that doesn't look good. You might want to look into that. And it inspired us to start looking into this. And I have a friend who does solar panel installation. I reached out to him, and he told me about there's a website called eTrackIt. Does anyone else know about this? I didn't know about this. It's like a database online of solar installations, who installed it, when it was installed, how much energy it's producing. It's this online database. And he said, I can see that the system was installed 12 years ago. It's still under warranty. Here's who put it in. You're not online. You should be. And it got us kind of looking into it and realizing his description was, you have a Cadillac and no one in your organization knows how to use it. So we're now starting to, okay. The SEM program, while we were doing a walk around, the tenant at the building where the system wasn't working had one experience with her electric bill, and then we talked with a tenant at a separate building where the system was working, and his electric bill was $7, which we didn't know, and we didn't have a way to track, and so it inspired us to say we really should get this working again. So huge energy savings for the tenants, and it's a real feather in our cap that we want to keep operational.
Awesome. Thank you so much, panelists, for answering that question. And now I'm going to ask Nancy a question. Nancy, what learning opportunities has multifamily strategic energy management offered Milestone Properties?
Wow. Well, just to list a few, because I feel like I've taken classes now, and I've learned stuff where I'm like, that makes sense. I just never thought of it that way. So just, I mean, we have webinars and virtual events that you guys have put on for us that we have free access to, educational workshops hosted at our communities, put together by experts in the industry that have connected us with even more government nonprofit programs. We've gotten information on programs even with just PGE, Portland General Electric. We have like classes that you can take on your own at your own pace. There's so many learning opportunities that you have access to. It's a little bit overwhelming sometimes because I feel like I'm maybe not doing enough, but
You're doing enough. You're doing a great
I
job.
was gonna say, I think that's just the manager brain in me, that there's always something that you can be doing or learning or improving on. But I think the biggest thing that we've seen has benefited our property has definitely been those in-person workshops led by the experts. I love bringing people to my community and giving them access to my residents so my residents can ask questions and feel like they are being listened to, and they're not kind of being given the runaround. And I think effective networking it's huge to be able to be given access to be in rooms like this one, because if it weren't for Energy Trust, we wouldn't be at this conference. I wouldn't have access to be able to speak with even more people about new industry standards or just the direction that we're all wanting to go in. So the connection is everything. Being connected with people who have the same goal as you, that's huge. And many hands makes less work.
Oh my gosh, the connection is everything. Can I just quote her on that? I want to take that with me forever. You actually kind of got into my follow-up question, and I know Deborah might have a comment on this as well, but what my question was going to be, what networking opportunities exist for sharing like lessons learned from her classes and best practices? And I think she just said the connection is everything. Deborah, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, like even sitting on this panel right now, and I'll be talking about e-track it. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm busily making notes. So it's the networking with each other. We have once a month meetings, Zoom meetings where we get on for half hour or an hour, and we talk about what's going on at each of our different properties and what have been successes and what are our challenges, and then how do we work through those challenges. Another thing that Nancy had talked about was the education of our residents. The Community Energy Project came in and gave workshops to our residents, which we did multiple times, because you remember the 7 different language thing. So we had translators that came in, and it was so well attended by our residents. We had one of the workshops was well over 40 residents that came. They were so excited to be able to learn what they can do, ways of staying cool with less energy usage in their units during the summer, or how to stay warmer with, again, less energy usage. The goodie bags, as Albion had talked about, there's incentives for the residents to show up in the first place. Of course, we bring food as well, because that's always going to be the thing to draw in the residents. But the networking with other organizations that are on the same path as we are, the classes that Energy Trust has given to us, our ability to draw on the Community Energy Project, which is a different organization from Energy Trust. There's other organizations, other networks that you're able to draw on, so that, again, many hands make light work. We don't have to do the backup research. We get to take advantage of the research that others have done.
Thank you so much, Deborah. So I do want to remind people, she just mentioned this huge number of people that attended that workshop. And I want to let you know that this panel represents a variety of sizes of multifamily properties. So Milestone Properties has 3, and I think one only has 49 doors. But Schnitzer Properties is much larger. They have 3 very large buildings in downtown Portland that are filled. So there, we have well, when we're talking about the experiences, it's for a wide range of tenants and tenant numbers. So, all right, this next question, as Karen said, is an all play question, which I like a lot. How has multifamily strategic energy management been a benefit to your residents?
Hi, again, me. I'm actually going to comment on and a follow-up to Deborah and then hopefully answer your question. Essentially, as part of the community energy project, one of our staff in doing one of my staff in doing the resident engagement with CEP, which is their acronym, they nominated her for, and her name's Miley Stanton Flowers. She's been teaching the hoarding class here at this seminar, and she's my eviction prevention specialist, and we all love her at my buildings. And she won an energy award, and so we were able to participate and kind of mingle with the community energy project people and get, again, networking, following up with some networking there. It was their, I think they have an annual fundraising event, and as part of that, one of my staff was honored and given an actual physical award in her energy for working with my residents. And as part of that, we've all been very grateful to be connected with other people that are out there. They don't know that some of these things and the free money exist. They don't know the free light bulbs. We are not going to have to buy light bulbs, I mean, for at least 2 years for 540 units. I mean, there's all kinds of incentives out there. And I know that, you know, I brought pom-poms today because these guys, they laugh and joke about it, but I'm constantly raising. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I got it right here. I got pink's my favorite
Yes, the
color.
pom-poms come out. They
Yeah.
actually bought us pom-poms to use. That's how enthusiastic they are. So only ours are blazer colors. You mentioned that
Yeah,
earlier.
for the record, I played basketball. I did not do cheerleading, but I think it's important to motivate people. My staff, all of my staff have pom-poms, but as part of this process, we were able to connect with other people who also now have pom-poms and are cheering their people on for some energy savings. And so I like that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, that answered the question. I'm going to move on to the second all play question here, and that is, does anyone have an example of a successful resident engagement activity or project that you've implemented at your property?
Yeah, I got this. Incentive or programs for our residents. I mean, there's like the basic knowledge, right? It's turn the light switch off when you're not in the room using stuff, change your light bulbs to LED when they go out. They were pretty excited to know that we would be replacing appliances with Energy Star grade appliances. That was pretty exciting for them. So I think in bringing this program to our property, we've shown our residents that we're willing to make those changes. The owner sat down with us and went over the energy plan. And that was really huge for us because a lot of our owners, because they're not the boots on the ground, a lot of time overlook things that need to be upgraded, things that need to be done. And so with our owner being on board, I was able to look at my residents and say, the owner cares about this. The owner wants to make these changes to better not only your inside of your unit, but also the community. Anything that has to do with like identifying like leaks, if anything like electrical is going on in the unit, it has been so helpful to educate my residents on what to look out for and how to identify these things, because I can't be everywhere all at once, even though I would like to be. But if I have an extra set of even 20, 30 different eyes that are looking for these things, they're going to come to me. And because we've built that trust with these incentives that we've talked about, they're more willing to come to me and say, this is what's going on in my apartment. I need your help fixing it, and allowing us the opportunity to fix it for them in a timely manner to show them again that we care and that this is something that the owner would like to do. So, yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just the knowledge and equipping them with that, and then acting on that when they bring anything to our attention that needs to be dealt with. So.
All right, I've got another question here. And this one involves strategies that you've employed or deployed, I guess, that actively involve tenants and give them a sense of bringing them together or shared responsibility for something greater. Do you have any examples of that?
So, help shared responsibility with the residents. We had at our big opening for the end of the project, we had a table out where residents were able to sign a pledge. And, so there's a whole list of different things that they can do, which included, turning off the lights and whatnot, a whole list of different little things that they could do that would make a difference. And the residents would go down and say, okay, yes, this one makes sense. I will do this one. No, I need to have my light on at this time for whatever. And it wasn't just lights. It also had to do with maybe taking shorter showers so that you are using less water and less heating energy for the water heater. A whole collection of different things. Residents would choose which ones that they were willing to commit to doing and then sign a pledge. And it was shocking how full that table was. Karen was there behind me watching, and I'm trying to explain and use translation at the same time for some of them, but the whole table's filled and they're all signing up the pledge. Yes, I want to do this. Which part do I keep? Oh, I give you this part. I need to keep this so I can remember what I signed up for. The residents were super excited to be able to do that.
Did you bring the pom-poms for that one?
Where are the, I did not bring my pom-poms. Quinn, bring out your pom-poms.
Yeah, all right, I'm just wondering.
There was, and then at another property, there was a resident who has always been super environmentally conscious. We're HUD housing, and so we have to use a lot of paper. There's this whole stack, do a recertification each year, and there's a whole stack full of papers, and we have to, and she would literally break down in tears because we had so much paper, and why are you using all this paper? We don't need it. And so when we brought this project in to the properties and we were explaining, hey, this is the direction we're going, she again was super excited. Yes, this is what we need to do. Thank you for doing this.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Deborah. I've got one more question in my little section here. And this one, I'm really curious to know, and I think you will be too. Do you know if you've had energy efficiency initiatives that have directly contributed to increased tenant satisfaction or retention rates? All right. So I am, was that some direction, please? All right. Well, we hope that it's going to be, we're going to find some numbers eventually. This program's still younger, but established. And we're hoping that we come up with some numbers that are going to support that. We hope that we're creating longer retention rates and tenant satisfaction overall. So, all right, Karen, over to you.
Thanks, Marty. So Deborah, we're going to come to you. And I'm going to ask you, how did Schnitzer Properties change through your participation in multifamily SEM?
That one's actually easy. We created, so we had this idea of where we wanted to go. I had talked earlier about, we're proactive. We see the direction that energy use is going in. Fossil fuels need to cut back on that. So that was a general direction that the management team was going for. In the process of participating in the SEM program, we created an actual policy, which we shared not only with the owners and our upper management and our residents, but also, of course, also our staff. And so through our participation in this and creating the policy, we have made this much more real and tangible and in the forethought of all of our staff members. So our managers are looking at what do we need to do in the property, and as we're thinking about how do we keep our property up and manage it effectively, what changes can we do that are going to help our energy usage? When it comes to our maintenance team and our custodial team is much more likely to be turning off the lights as they leave the building and looking for things that are going on that they can make a difference. Our maintenance team is more actively paying attention to, as I am replacing products, which product am I going to choose? Which one is going to make the most sense for the energy saving and for our property? I had another thought and it escaped that quickly as well. So the energy policy and then setting it forward in the minds of all of our staff is one of the main ways that we had made a change through our participation in this program.
So that's great, Deborah. I had a follow-up, and maybe Quinn, you'll answer that, but do you feel like that then energy management is now embedded in your organization?
Definitely. I'd say definitely. So I have 4 property managers. And I would say each of them are looking at their buildings in a different view. I've worked in all 4 of my properties at different times throughout the last 15 years. And essentially, I learned a lot by walking with the SEM people, Steve in particular. We found an issue. We found a hole that was in a random spot that you couldn't have found in HVAC if we hadn't actually explored some things that we were able to fix. But more importantly, I have 1 building engineer, 2 maintenance leads. We were able to learn things, even though they know a lot of things about the system, even they learned things that they could do better for changing filters. Sometimes following behind vendors is a good idea. We assume that we sign service agreements and contracts, and we assume that they're doing what they're doing. And most of the time they are, but on that off chance that they aren't, and a filter hasn't been changed, that's a big deal. And so, for my staff in particular, we learned a lot. I personally learned a lot. I know Deborah did. And in the process of it, it was a lot of fun. Besides the free money and the free light fixtures and all the other stuff, it was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, Deborah is Quinn, you're super proactive. When she was on the treasure hunt, if she saw something, she just called the vendor up right away. Hey, this needs to get fixed. Talk about being proactive. So anyone else feel like energy management has been embedded in their organization?
One of the things that we worked on this year was we started to produce O&M manuals for some of our properties that previously didn't have them. We have 5 properties enrolled in the SEM program, and they range. One of them is brand new. It's 2 years old. And the other one, all the way to the other end, it's, how old is the Coalhagen? That's 100 years or something like that. So no O&M manuals, no documentation, and all of the information for maintaining that property sits in the head of Robbie, who is our fantastic on-site maintenance staff. And Robbie's great, but if Robbie gets abducted by aliens next week, all that information goes away. And so something that I realized really quickly getting involved in this program was that I can sit in my kind of ivory tower and say, this is what we should be doing from an energy management standpoint. And we should be using low VOC paints, and we should be kind of all the LEED platinum laundry list. It all sounds great, but it really comes down to energy, and it's really the boots on the ground maintenance staff who I can wave my hand and say we should do this, but you've got to get Robbie's buy-in to make this work. And Robbie knows more about these buildings than myself or probably anyone else in my organization, and getting his involvement and picking his brain and building an O&M manual that will allow us to say, here's when we should be replacing the filters, and here are the kinds of filters that we'll be putting in here. If this breaks, here's what we want to replace it with, and slowly incrementally upgrading our plumbing fixtures to be, you know, low flow or other sustainability criteria in there. So the O&M manual, it seems like something that everybody should have and that is sitting on a shelf somewhere, but I was kind of surprised to find that actually for several of our properties, we don't have that. So that was a really important development for us, and it's an ongoing thing that we continue to work on and improve.
Well, didn't you change your policy too, like going forward for all your property? You had mentioned something. I'm sorry, I met Albion just a couple days ago. I met Albion a couple days ago, and you had mentioned something about forward, that going forward, when your buildings are getting built, you're actually considering some of the stuff that SEM has taught you. You just didn't mention that, and I wanted to toot your horn too.
That's true too.
And how about you, Nancy? You feel like Milestone Property Management is embedded energy management?
I think that I think there's always room for improvement. I think that with any new program, it's going to take at least a couple of years to really be embedded into what is the culture of our communities. But I feel like we have a really great start and we have a really great team and our residents are excited, and word is spreading that there are gift bags and gift cards at these workshops. So I'm hoping that next year and however long we continue with the SEM program or even by ourselves, that our residents will continue to engage with us, and not there yet, but we will be soon. So I just wanted, there's so many different communities that are being serviced by this. And we're seeing some really great results at different paces, but nonetheless, still great results.
All right, thank you. So here's our last all play question. And I know it's one that our audience is eager to hear about, and that is, what'd y'all do with your incentive money? So I'm going to start here with you, Albie, and we'll just work our way down. Go for it.
We did several things with the incentive money. There's minimal kind of cost of participating in SEM. I talk about like window film and pipe wrap and things. Those have, there's small cost for that. So we've taken the incentive money that we earned last year and we put that in a pot to fund the improvements for properties that we're doing this year. We've also started to use that money on properties that are not even in our SEM portfolio right now. We want to continue the properties that we did last year and this year. We want to add another 5 next year, start the whole process over. And we'll use that kind of as seed money for doing the improvements that are required at those properties. And the third thing that I was really excited to learn is our involvement with SEM has kind of spurred our organization to think about starting like a division within our organization that is just about looking at the sustainability and energy management of all of our properties, and which is really exciting. So that's okay, another analogy. I was an early adopter. I'm sorry. As an architect, I was an early adopter of LEED. And I say this to people all the time. I've been LEED accredited for years and years and years, and I've never done a LEED project. It always gets value engineered out. People always get to the point where they talk about cost and they say, yeah, we're not going to do that. So it's letters I have after my name that I haven't been able to use for 20 some years. And all of a sudden, kind of to my surprise, within my organization, I've realized that slowly we have started implementing real kind of boots on the ground energy sustainability change that's making a real impact. And that's exciting to see.
Thank you, Albion. Nancy with Milestone Property Management.
Well, believe it or not, we convinced our owners to save some of it. They didn't get to spend it right away. we put some aside for continued workshops in the future for our residents. We want to give back to them, say thanks for participating. And then we also put some seed money away for some larger scale projects that we have in the upcoming years that we would like to complete.
Thank you, Nancy. Quinn and Deborah?
I'll start. So initially, we used some of the incentive money for the translations. So we had, a lot of translations. We have to translate because of what we do and the fact that we're working with HUD. Everything needs to be translated. So part of it went into translation. But then beyond that, we were able to use part of it to as incentives for the residents to help them, encourage them to come to these meetings and the workshops and whatnot. And then I'll let them continue.
Oh, sure. I was told to keep it minimal here. Went back into our operations budget, of course. We have found places to spend that money to help us for the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much, panelists. And now we're going to open it up for Q&A. So what questions do you have? I would say stand up, say it loud and proud, and then we'll have our panelists answer. So I see someone in the back and then I'll come to you. Sure, go ahead. No. Just be loud. That's good. Okay, so if one of you have an answer, I'd like you to repeat her question generally and then answer.
Join the program for Southwest Washington.
I think it's really directed at you.
Yeah, it is.
What was the question?
The question is multifamily SEM available in Southwest Washington? And that is a great question because the Energy Trust does serve the Northwest Natural in the Southwest Washington territory. I know that the commercial program is offering it to commercial participants, and I will check into that for you. So let's hook up before you leave so I can get your card and get back to you, because I think that's a really good question that's worth delving into.
Thank you for that question. Gentleman in the blue shirt, what is your question today? Loudly, please. So the question is, what money have you saved from the program? Is that basically it? That's the point of the whole thing. What money have we saved?
That is a great question, and that's what we're working on this year. Setting online. Apparently, it's a whole process. If you have a property where the tenant is paying the electric bill, you have to ask them for permission to get access to that energy bill, which is the only way to kind of track what was their energy usage a year ago, what's their energy usage today. So last year was kind of the getting to know you, pipe insulation, window film. And this year, another thing that the SEM I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. Another thing that the SEM program says is the first year we're just getting started. The second year that you're in it, let's see your organization kind of become a little bit more self-fulfilling, kind of building its own internal momentum. So we started having monthly meetings. And it's funny that the more people in our organization that find out those meetings are happening, the more people want to come to them. And like, for example, our grant writer has found out about it. And she's taking this work and saying, we can, because we earned money over here, we can go get more money over here by saying, look at this great thing that we did. But I think that the nugget of what you're saying is the real, it's the point that we've realized as a group, this is all great, but at some point, someone's going to ask us this very question. This is, you're spending money here, how much money are you saving? So we've started that this year. Let's get the letters out to the tenants and say, give us access. May we please have access to your electric bill? Because not everybody's going to do that. We figure if we can get 90%, that's great. And then what are the quantifying the steps that we're taking that should be impacting our electric bill, and then looking at it a year from now and saying, what did we see? What's that savings? What did we spend doing it? And look, person that we're asking for this grant from, look at what we did. So that's the stage that we're at this year. So if I'm on this panel next year, you can ask me that again.
I'm sure there are other answers. And before we move on, I want to encourage people online. I know we've got a few online attendees. I see your hand and I saw another hand. And I would like you to go ahead and type in chat if you've got any questions for us. And I think, Quinn, did you have an answer to that one as well?
I just wanted to acknowledge your question. Your question is something that I think we've all expected, not just from, the general public and tenants, but from our owners specifically. I think all four of us are in an infancy of this program because we just started our second year. And I think that we'll be able to pull some concrete data, some statistical data on essentially the common areas. At least at some of my properties, we're all individually metered for my units. But we can pull some data. We just haven't done it yet. We just hit our 12-month mark. And so I just wanted to say, I think we're all in that infancy, but that is the long-term goal so that we can see it. But I don't know. I mean, I got free fixtures, light fixtures, free light bulbs. I can't see how we are paying more money in the common areas for lighting up my hallway. I have 17 floors in one of my buildings, 11 floors in another building. So I will be able to look at that data. We just haven't done it yet. So, and I think that's just because we're in our second year and just started our second year and we're in an infancy still.
Thank you, Quinn. All right. I saw the woman in tan. Again, go ahead and ask your question.
Blue.
It's on.
Yeah, there was great feedback in my hearing aids.
Oh.
So how are you tracking your data? Are you using Energy Star Portfolio Manager? Are you using third-party manager like EG or Energy Cap?
So we're using a platform called Energy Sensei, an energy performance platform, where we do a rigorous testing and making sure that everything lines up. And that's what we use for our, what we call models. And we go through those with you for your common areas, for your residents. And we look on at them on, say, a quarterly basis to see how you're doing, how you're progressing, where we maybe need to look at some things. So it's through Energy Performance Platform.
All right. I saw a hand over here and then over there. What is your question, sir? Yeah, I'm going to say speak loudly so people online can hear you as well.
So one of you guys had mentioned that it's good looking at big scale, right? Worldwide or whatever, what's happening? How are we making a change? So my question is, do any of this program SCM include anything like smart metering for demand response or anything like that, integration with the grid, not just silo the building, but how are we integrating with the rest of the grid? Does it take that into account?
We are made aware of many different products. The smart metering is, one of the classes that was available to us. The smart thermostats, yes, it does extend beyond just one unit. It does extend further.
All right, gentleman in blue.
I wanted to add on to the platforms and data tracking, and I was curious, it sounds like at the moment that might be happening from you all at Energy Trust versus, so I wanted to understand what information you provide to the owners versus collecting yourselves, and or what other data or support you provide for owners who want to track that information, maybe not just in existing buildings that have had upgrades, but are there support or platforms that are available for new buildings as well to track that?
Wow. I mean, I think for us, for the four of us that are up here, the tracking that we haven't started that part yet. And I think that's mostly because we're just starting our second year. I can envision, because we get bills, I'm the one that signs off the utility bills for all four of my properties. I imagine we are going to be able to do a side-by-side at the 12-month mark, and I'll be able to see if we're using more, what is it that we're doing in this building? What is it that we're doing in this building? And can we actually see a decrease, at least in my common areas? As for the tenants, we have I don't know if anybody's familiar with HUD, but we have a tax credit overlay as well. And when we are interfacing with our tenants once a year, we do a utility analysis of the building and try to determine whether or not, and you're going to have to help out here, but basically whether or not we need to, whether or not the rents go up and how much credit or how much of a credit our tenants would get for an energy cost. And we do lots of interfacing with tenants to sign them up for LEAP and all the other incentives that are out there. I don't know if you are familiar with those things, but we do a lot of interfacing with my service coordinators and tenants to do that. And so being able to get the information from the tenants once a year is probably gonna work. We just haven't gotten to that point, or at least for my properties, we haven't gotten to that point. Yeah.
All right,
I think
thank
those are
you.
good goals. I wanted to answer the part about the owner thing. So when we met with our owners to tell them what we were doing and changing our policy, they weren't asking for concrete things. Or fortunately for us, our owners are looking at the world. How can we affect change with our little itty bitty stuff for the world? And so I'm really grateful because I work for not only a good company, but also my owners. And so they were able to buy into us participating, which, our time, buy into us participating, but our time is very minimal. Probably less for me than it was for Deborah. Deborah had to do more work than I did simply because I was unavailable. But essentially, I think explaining that part to our owners was really important so that they understood, yeah, we're getting this big check. This is great. We are, getting these new light fixtures. We're getting new light bulbs. We are evaluating our properties for future development on how to help the building. But in the end, it was my owners that said, this is great. You're doing a little part in saving the world. And I realize that that's probably not happening everywhere, and that people look at things more from a monetary perspective, especially if you're the owner and you want to make some money on your properties. But in this case, that's how they were looking at it.
Thank you so much, Quinn. We have time for one last question, and actually it's online is the winner, but I encourage everyone to stay. We are happy, the panelists, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Online person, what's our question?
Yeah, so the question is, what is the funding source for SEM program?
The funding source. So Energy Trust is funded by the public purpose charge that is paid by all ratepayers. So we take that money and we provide these programs to organizations.
And we hope that answers your question. And thank you, panelists. I appreciate your time. And I'm going to ask to turn the deck back on here real quick. And I wanted to say, I did say thank you, and we appreciate your time here today. And I wanted to, isn't clear enough, all of our panelists have actually been part of the Energy Trust of Oregon Strategic Energy Management Program, and they've already explained a ton of the benefits of strategic energy management. And then Energy Trust, our program, comes in and we support you in implementing strategic energy management into your multifamily properties. Now, we hope you build the structure so that your program will last well into the future. And we also provide those financial incentives, and it's actually up to $34,000 if you enroll 4 buildings and achieve all of your incentives. So first year participants actually move through the program. You've heard them say with each other. And these individuals have been in many workshops together. And as it happens, we're starting a new cohort or group of organizations moving through in February in 2024. And if you're interested in finding out more about the program, please come ask myself, Marty, or Karen, and we have a table downstairs, or you could also contact us directly if you would like to do so. So on behalf of Karen and myself, I want to say a big thank you to our panelists today, Nancy, Quinn, Albie, and Deborah. Weren't they great? Thank you very much for joining us, and thank all of you for attending. Again, we are happy to answer your questions and we appreciate your time.